Hello. How's it going, everyone? So in this video, I'm going to be talking about how to optimize your Facebook creative. Question comes around a lot, and there's a lot of issues whenever you're looking at creative because it's not as straightforward as seeing whatever creative is showing the best ROAS or the better CPA. It's more so about what is actually happening in the funnel for the multiple creatives and which creative is sort of acting as your top of funnel, middle of funnel, and bottom of funnel. This is a very, very common mistake where people will tend to take out the ad that maybe is spending the most amount of money, but is not driving the best results. And that is incorrect. That is not the way you want to think about this, because what Meta is doing now is, at least as of November or since November 2024, is they did a shift in the algorithm, which has essentially pushed us more into the realm of having things more consolidated into one ad set. So if you're a part of my Skool community, you probably already know the structure and understand all this. It's not super complicated, but it does require a little bit of understanding. So assuming that that's the case, we're going to kind of go into sort of how to optimize one of those pieces, right? So picture that you have one ad set and you have, 50 creatives. Let's just make it crazy, right? How do you know what creative is working and how do you optimize that? So I created this sheet right here, and I'm actually going to show you guys. Okay, so this is my Miro board, as you guys are probably very familiar with by now. So anyways, how do we optimize Facebook ad creative? Well, the first question is, what type of creative do we need in the first place? And I'm going to go through the top row here to kind of give you guys a baseline sort of understanding of the reason as to why we want all this creative, as well as what all this creative styles are. So I view UGC as essentially just user-generated content, more native content. This is a very, very, very broad category, but this would be considered, I guess, a type of creative that Meta wants. Another one is us versus them. So think of this as it's you versus the standard in the market. So let's say that, there's a wash rag that's yours that automatically cleans itself and it looks amazing, right? Let's just assume that. And then there's another wash rag that looks all dirty and gross, and that's what everyone else is using, is like the regular, that's like the run of the mill in the market, but it's not necessarily what you want. You want a clean wash rag kind of thing. I know it's probably not the best example, but you kind of get my point here. Is you're trying to position your product in a better position, redundant there, as your competitor. So you're trying to make your product look better than what the market is selling and people are buying. So this could be kind of in combination with a UGC style of ad. So keep in mind that some of these will blend together a little bit, but the whole concept is to make sure that you have a you versus the market kind of angle there. The other one is AI. So this is another broad-ish one. So Meta says that this is going to be, one of the things that they want you to test, which is more geared towards letting the AI actually build the creative itself and make adjustments to it inside of their platform. I'm not a huge fan of this. One thing that I would lean more into versus letting Meta have full control over that is running an AI ad where you say that it's an AI ad and it's essentially a clone of you or a founder or some form of AI that's not necessarily real that you can tell, and you explain that it's an AI. You don't try to lie to the consumer because you want to be as transparent as possible. And obviously trust is one of the biggest things whenever you're building a brand. The next one in here is the face to camera. So what this means is essentially this. So face as close to the camera kind of thing, where you're talking about a product. It's very engaging from a facial standpoint and not like an environmental standpoint. Hopefully that makes sense. And then this could be, like I said, different variations of like an us versus them, but you're like up close and talking about two different products. So like I said, these kind of all blend together a little bit, but you want to make sure that you have the diversity in here. The other one in here is the founder story. I think this is probably one of the most powerful ones because not many people are able to do it because a lot of founders are a little shy. And so with that being said, founder story, just think of it as why you started the company in the first place and how did you sort of come to the position you're at now, and what do you want to provide for the market? Those kinds of things that are going to sort of give the brand a more authentic feel and actually come from the person that started the brand or who is in charge of the brand. The other one in here is a product demo. So this is pretty straightforward. This is, think of it as you're essentially just showing off a product, talking about what it's used for, what are the features of it. You don't really go too in depth on that, but just kind of a general sort of, hey, this is how you use the product, right? This is a cup and it's someone drinking out of the cup, and maybe they're, it keeps their water warm or whatever the case is, their tea warm without you having to, heat it up again, right? That could be a example of you showing the product off. And then the customer testimonials, this one is, I would say, probably pretty easy one for most people to get, just because you have a ton of customers ideally that have the product that you're wanting to show. And so what we do for this is we like to give discounts to any customer that shoots a video for us of them pretty much just giving an authentic opinion about the product. It's sort of like UGC, but it's more from an authentic perspective of someone that's already bought the product ideally, and you're not paying someone to sort of pretend like they, bought the product. So it's better if it's coming from an actual person that found you organically. And this is something that is also good from a static perspective. So keep in mind that some of these can also be static. So it could be something like, a chat back and forth between like people and saying, hey, like I got XYZ product. This is why I like it. Here's the discount code that I got from them because I'm a loyal customer or something like that. So there's different versions you can do of this as well too. And then features and benefits, this kind of blends with product demo. I like to say that features and benefits tend to be a little bit better on a static ad, but you can test both video and static. And the reason why is because features and benefits are essentially just listing off the good and the bad, or I guess mainly just the good quality of the product or service that you have, right? And so it's sort of explaining it more. It's like a product demo, but more so giving you like the details around it, not just showcasing it, if that makes sense. And then whitelisting. So this is something that I like to kind of categorize as sort of a group of different styles. So originally, whitelisting is if you partner with a brand and you actually run your ads on their page itself. However, what I find to be a little bit better is if you're doing a collaboration with someone versus running an ad through their page, because then it's more of a partnership versus you sort of tricking people and them thinking that, it just doesn't really build the brand as much as like a partnership, in my opinion. So just want to throw that out there as a difference there. So whitelisting, I would say, counts kind of in that realm of things. And this could be obviously static and, video, either or both. And then positioning test, right? So this is very similar to the us versus them, which can also be, like I said, static and video, but this is more so gearing towards a specific competitor, right? And this is something that I would be very careful about, because if you go too aggressive, then it's going to make the brand look bad, and you're just going to look like you're essentially getting, you're not going to look professional. And so you have to be kind of careful whenever you do this, because you also might create some enemies, which could be good on the engagement side of things, but definitely something to be a little bit careful about. And obviously you want to have very close contact with the founder or whoever is in charge of the brand image of the company, because this is an area that I've seen kind of go sideways. And so be very careful with this. But this is essentially, like I said, you versus another specific competitor. It could be showing the product and not having the name in it versus your product. And so if people know, for example, the brand so much that they'll recognize the product, then that's perfect. But just keep in mind that this is more so something where it's saying, hey, this is how we're better than this specific competitor in this market. So positioning, just be a little careful with it. But it's definitely an area where if you have a very innovative product, it works really well. And this is something that, like I said, I don't see as many people doing, because product differentiation is not as vast as we would like when it comes to having all the creatives. A lot of decisions are more so based off of emotion than specifically features for the most part, which is, like I said, marketing in a nutshell. Okay, cool. So I know that was kind of a lot, but this is sort of the baseline that I like to work from. So each one of these variations is sort of like a category of, an ad. And so if I find out, for example, that the UGC ads have the most amount spent, the best results, and the best engagement, right? We're going to make it black and white. Then I'm going to either decide to push more variations into the UGC side of things, right? So this could be like a man in the ad, a woman in the ad, someone young, old, doing something different, different type of like avatar, but still the same format as the UGC, and ideally very similar to the ad that was successful. It's just targeting a different demo. And this is something that was talked about actually in one of our YouTube videos, where we essentially found out that it was a cat brush or a hairbrush for cats. And it made it so it was really easy to clean off the hair from the brush. And so we originally thought, well, let's just push this towards, cat owners and dog owners. And then we're like, well, if, the brush is just for animal hair, cat hair, like it could be for dog hair, anything like that. We weren't really seeing that much success with it. And the weird thing was, when we changed the avatar from a younger woman to an older woman, it completely blew up. And it was just, that demo was like directly where it was correlated to, and it just matched the ICP like perfectly. And so what that essentially meant, and the conclusion we got from that, is that it's people that are younger aren't as concerned about having their brush, having the feature to automatically remove the hair with a click, versus older people were more geared towards having the easy feature because, arthritis, whatever the case was. It's just they're more so for the comfort of using the product versus the younger generation. And so you'll find these little pockets that you're like, oh, that's interesting. I never knew that, or I never would have thought of this type of demographic actually converting on this based on just the change of the avatar and the ad itself. So there are a lot of opportunities that you can do that are kind of subsets of this that I would test if you have a standout winning ad group or ad style. And this allows you to then say, okay, let's focus more on that. And then maybe we do another test on one of the variants over there. So you kind of work both angles at once. So that's something that I would say. And then in terms of the overall optimization pattern that I would look at if we're looking at everything across the board, so let's say that they're all very similar. Meta, like I was saying earlier, is building the entire funnel via the ad set. And so you're going to have ads that are getting terrible results, but really good engagement and a lot of spend. And then you're going to be getting ads that have an insanely high amount of results and a medium amount of spend and terrible engagement. So there's so much variations, and think about it as there's different parts of the funnel, right? Further up the funnel is going to have more engagement. Ideally, you're going to try to be optimizing towards engagement and trying to get people to actually, learn about the brand. You're not going to necessarily attribute as much conversions to those specific creatives, but versus bottom of funnel creatives, like let's say a product feature or something like a customer testimonial, you already know about the brand at that point typically. And so the ad is then going to optimize towards the bottom of funnel part of that journey or of the user when they see maybe the founder story on the top of funnel, and then they see the UGC, and then they see the static discount ad that's coming in that's a customer testimonial of some sort. That's going to get the majority of conversions typically, but it's not necessarily always what's driving the most amount of sales. So you have to be very aware of these different levels of engagement, or different levels, I guess you can say, of KPIs, to take a look and better understand exactly what is your top of funnel ad, so you don't pause it, and then your bottom of funnel ad. And you also don't want to just create a bunch of bottom of funnel ads because they're looking better in the account, right? So really, really important. This is probably the hardest part about Meta, is trying to understand where the funnel is. We have some tools that can help with that. Obviously, we talk about it in our school community, but it's one of those things to where it's always developing, and ads are becoming less about the strategic structure and more about how to optimize the creative and how the KPIs work within that one ad set. So it's not like we're building separate audiences and testing this creative over here on ABO and then split testing. It's way away from that. We're completely away from that. So to give you guys some numbers to sort of like show a hierarchy on this, amount spent is typically the number one thing I look at as the biggest indicator for success on the platform, because the logic of it is that Meta wants to keep you on the platform. They don't want to have you have a bad experience. And so if there's an ad that's giving you a good experience, and in Meta's eyes, they see that, then they're going to put more money towards that ad versus an ad that doesn't have that user experience. And so what you'll find is that if you have an ad that spends a lot but poor results, and you end up pausing that ad that spent it a lot and had poor results, your overall account drops in terms of performance. And that's because you have a top of funnel ad that's driving that interest and building up the quality of users that are going to your site, whereas most people, will think, oh, I just paused that because of results. And then you don't see that trickle down effect happen from your top to bottom of funnel. They normally just, like I said, focus on bottom of funnel. The second layer on top of this is results. And this is pretty simple. It's what everyone looks at, which is the cost per acquisition, or the ROAS. Seeing exactly what type of results are coming from this in the first place. Now, ideally, in a perfect scenario, you would have a segmentation of warm and cold traffic. And like I said, we talk way more about this in other videos, but there's a whole realm of things where we want to draw correlations to your actual bank account and not just what the platform's saying. So be very careful about this. Long story short, really good results versus poor results tend to be warm traffic versus cold traffic, right? Warm traffic, you're going to see like a 4x ROAS. Cold traffic, you're going to see maybe like a 2x ROAS, just to kind of put the equation out there. So keep that in mind whenever you're looking at results, that you're looking more at the middle of funnel or the bottom of funnel, depending on your buying cycle. And then engagement. So think of this as like the hook rate, click-through rate, what is actually happening to the ad itself and how is that impacting, or how are you visualizing that from the ads manager, right? Do you see that your click-through rate is up? Okay, why is it up? Are we seeing more conversions? Okay, if there's more conversions, it's probably bottom of funnel, so click-through rate is not as viable. That's why I have this on the number 3, is because I typically look at this after the fact of the amount spent and the results, because I more so want to just see the type of creative and understand if it was the hook that got them, or if the hold rate's really good and the actual messaging is good, or they're both good. Keep in mind that engagement is going to be also heavily dictated by the top of funnel, or if you're looking at like a top of funnel creative or a bottom of funnel creative. So whenever you're optimizing accounts, this is the hierarchy that I like to use. Amount spent, like I said, is pretty far ahead in this, but remember, whenever you're scaling a business, always look at the back end metrics, the NCAC, the MER, and understand what the actual ad scale is driving to the business, because at the end of the day, that's what people care about. They don't really care as much about ROAS. They might think they do. They care about what's in their bank account. And so with that being said, take this information and have fun with it, because this is a direction that obviously marketing is going into more and more. And we're getting away from that idea of, all these different strategies and layering on, like I said, audiences over here on top of funnel. And then this is our bottom of funnel audience. And then we're going to test this ad with this audience to see if, the ICP rate, is perfectly aligned. And then, split testing. Well, maybe let's change the colors a little bit. It's like those days are totally gone. The diversity in creative is the future. And it's because we're building up the entire funnel. So like I said, have fun with this and let me know what you think in the comments. Maybe I'm a total idiot and I didn't explain this well, but I want to say if you got this far, thank you again. And feel free to hit the subscribe button, because I'm going to have a lot more videos coming out talking about how Meta is working as well as how Google's working. Thanks, and I will see you guys in the next video.